Fireside Chat. We are ending our Trailblazers and Trendsetters series. I'm really excited because we have a trailblazer in media, Khaleeqa, who is going to talk to us about how she is trailblazing the media space, how she's been able to transform nonprofits and her work through nonprofit work to really do media in a way that is in a human way. So I'm really excited to talk to her, chat with her. Before we jump into it, we do want you to follow us on all of our social media platforms, whether you're watching on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. Don't forget to follow us or subscribe to our channel. Please also follow me at Shaniqua E. Moore on all platforms. That's Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And don't forget to subscribe to our ATO Rise podcast every week on Fridays. I'm releasing new episodes. So don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, wherever you choose to listen. All right, let's jump into it. Really excited to talk to you. So we are again, and I probably didn't mention this when we were just chatting, but we're in our Trailblazers, Trendsetters, Trendsetting series. And what we've been doing is talking to amazing women like you that are just trailblazing their industries. And we get to talk to a media expert. So I'm really excited because you found a way to combine both nonprofit and media together. I think it's such a powerful just tool that we need today that we don't see enough of.
Yeah, and thank you for having me in this space. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Khaleeqa, and I started this company because really, what'd you say?
I called you Khaleeqa, but I didn't know it was Khaleeqa. I assumed it was like
Oh
some
no.
mine. I
Yeah,
apologize.
yeah, no worries, because it's Arabic and everybody always does that, so no worries. But yeah, I just thank you for having me. It's been a journey for me as an entrepreneur to be a trailblazer. It's not something that I would say is for everybody or it's easy, but I'm really passionate about the work that I get to do and how I get to like share and highlight amazing stories from all walks of life on platforms that everybody's engaging with. So it's just really an honor, honestly.
I love it. I love that so much. Well, Kalia, I just want to formally introduce you as the Chief Executive Officer, the Chief Creative Officer. I love that. And founder of Real Well Media, an experienced Chief Creative Officer, content creator, social media strategist based in New York metro area. Kalia is skilled in content creation, social media strategy, video, photo set production, copywriting, web development. She holds a master's in business administration and in global business. Her current activities includes brand development, social media management for lifestyle and conscious brands, and she develops and implements social media strategies that increases brand awareness and engagement. Every time, Clea, I see women in this space, it brings me so much joy for two reasons. One, I am no expert in it, but two, because I believe it's a field or an industry where women are underrepresented. So I love the fact that you're in this industry and you're trailblazing it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Of course. Well, let's start off by telling us, if you don't mind, how you got into the creative fields. What inspired you? What was your inspiration?
Yeah, I think as a kid, I've always just been super, super creative. Like always, with arts and crafts and projects. And even as a young kid, my dad had a video camera and I was always like in front of the camera and speaking. I was doing public speaking as a kid. And so when the industry started to like boom, when Facebook was created, when Instagram came out, I was like, this is for me. I like dove right in. But at that time, there was really, I don't think businesses really were taking it seriously. And they weren't taking it seriously for a very long time. I think the pandemic just like exacerbated all of it. And so I went into a more traditional career where I was in finance, and then I went into nonprofit work, and I was the CEO of a nonprofit for 10 years. And so I went that traditional route, but at the same time, I was like crushing it, doing all the work on the side to build my own brands. And so I was like launching courses. I would go live every week. I was building multiple websites, multiple brands. I started like this 5 a.m. club online. I was just doing so much before it was like super popular to be doing it. And I think that was like very humbling because I learned how to do all these skills on my own and invest in my own money and time to learn them. Um, but I also went through a bit of imposter syndrome. And as many women, especially Black women, we go through that. And I was like, oh, this sucks. Like, I maybe I don't have it. And so I took a backseat for a very long time until it started to pop up again. And my job demanded that I actually use those skills in the job. And I realized how lucrative it could be. And I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, let's start an agency. I mean, I've never been risk averse, so I was like, let's just dive in and do it. And so, yeah, that's how I got here today.
I love that, and I love your story from childhood, being something that you always gravitated to, the arts, and how that translated
Yeah.
to nonprofit, and then to what you're doing today. I love that. You talked a little bit about the imposter syndrome. Is that something that you feel Black women deal with a lot, especially in your industry? And if so, how?
Oh yeah, big time. I think kind of my diverse background with working for in finance, which was very male dominated, white male dominated, then going into nonprofit work, which is more female dominated, and also a lot of Black women are in that space, to then going back to male dominated, white male dominated space. I was like, it it was a great transition because I went into the last phase of that working with other people in a proper organization, like, oh wow, I actually am brilliant and smart, and like, what did I ever doubt before? But I think if you're maybe working in spaces where people all look like you, or you don't really have to face any kind of issues with that, then the growth is just different. And so once for me it clicked, I was like, wow, I'm brilliant, I'm creative, I'm a boss, I'm a leader, like I could do this. It was
Yeah,
like mentally the shackles came off and I was able to do like even more. And so I think it's definitely something that we all deal with, especially Black women. And I always like just want to say, like, if you have the idea, like life will line up for you to actually execute on that. But the fact that you're even having ideas about where the bigness of who you can be is a signal that like you're supposed to be there. And so just go for it and work through those emotions. Like life will just squeeze the confidence into you as you go that way, you know?
I love that. I love that so much. And I think it's so true when you have a vision or a grand idea. Sometimes you lack confidence, or you doubt that you could do something like that, or you could execute it. But a lot of times, the things that we doubt and we feel like we don't have, we've probably already been doing it. And so, even to your story, where your job put a demand on you to have to use the skills that you had already been using, that you were essentially already really.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's I think what you're saying too is like what's coming to me is, you know, at first starting out, no one found value in actually paying someone money to create content for them when I started, like when it was all brand new.
Wow.
Now, like that's the complete opposite case. Like we're paying people to like try on shirts and like have an influencer, and it's very lucrative. But I always saw the value in it, and I did not stop my learning and growth just because other people didn't. And so I think there's a lot of things when you're talking about being a trailblazer. Being a trailblazer to me is somebody who can see the trend before it comes and know how to rightly invest in themselves and position themselves for when the timing comes that they'll be in the right position. And so I think a lot of my journey has been like holding fast to things that are unique, innovative, even though the world doesn't necessarily recognize it in the moment, they probably will down the line, because I don't think I've missed it when it comes to like the next trend that's happening.
I love that. And what's interesting about trend setting, Kalia, is trend setting often you're ahead of time. So You might be doing something like you did that was not so popular at the time, but it essentially took being that trailblazer and that visionary to continue doing it in spite of your peers or other people not catching on, right? You're like, all right, you haven't
Yeah.
caught on yet, but maybe after, a few years later, and of course you didn't know there was going to be a pandemic when you were doing,
Yeah.
you had no idea. And
Yeah.
then life happened and the world changed and you were ready because
Mhm.
you already have been prepared. You were already doing it.
Yeah.
Love that. That's exactly
Mhm.
what a trendsetter is.
Thank you. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
So I'd love to hear more about your experience with the Real Well Media. What is that, and what do you do with that particular company?
Yeah, so it's really a joy. It's a lot of work, but it's really a joy. So people and organizations come to me when they are in need of content, and specifically around how they could use content to market themselves, or if they're looking to rebrand themselves in a new way. And so what we do with our clients is like day one an assessment, seeing where they're at, seeing what they're looking to do. I really am strong on like authenticity and vulnerability. And so like we do a deep dive and really understanding who they are. And then we create a brand Bible of like what are the possibilities, what can we do, can we show up on TikTok in this way, can we show up on Instagram in this way, can we create a long form podcast, can we do this, can we do that. So I create an entire like map of where they can go, and then my favorite part is just executing. And so what we do is like we will batch a lot of content. So we have these days which we call on sites, where like they're so meticulous and detail oriented, and we start really early in the morning at 6 a.m. We go to the end of the day, and we will batch like 90 days of content or 6 months of content, and it'll be like wardrobe changes, makeup, the little lights, all that, which I love. I love being on set. I love picking locations for this, and then we do that batch. Once that's done, we go through a process like either myself, because when you're an entrepreneur, you have to know all the jobs, either myself or I have a couple editors I work with. We write copy, we edit, we get it all together into that monthly calendar for them. And every month we're submitting the content we've created for approval. We don't just do like video content, so we're also creating newsletters and blog posts and all sorts of fun things depending on like what that client wants to do. And we're launching it all and then tracking it. So we use software to like track engagement and like see how successful things are. And then we probably talk about once a quarter, like, hey, what worked from last quarter? What doesn't work? And how do we want to continue to build and create? What do we want to lean into? What do we want to, reduce doing? And it's really cool. I think it's been like mass producing my own process when I used to do this. Like you kind of would go for a little bit, see what worked, what did people engage with, what did they not? And it's a process of like editing yourself. And so I think a big piece of advice for somebody or an organization that's looking to do this for the first time, like put themselves out there, be open to like whatever you put out there being a rough draft. Like you're not going to hit it on the first time. And as you actually continue to create, you'll get more ideas on how to create better. And you will find your voice in that that will inspire people. But from the first time, working with us, working with Real Well, you'll get it pretty good. Like it'll hit, it'll be good. But the more we continue to work, the better it's gonna come. So yeah, that's
Love
my
that.
crazy thing.
I mean, because you really take clients from that brand. Like some people may not know what a brand is, or how do I even create a brand, or what does it look like for me? How do I be authentic in my brand, right? But the fact that you're
Mhm.
taking them from the very start to, it sounds like, to completion is absolutely groundbreaking. What does this look like for nonprofits? So nonprofits may, I think, struggle sometimes with branding, right? And even we talked about this before we went live, like telling stories of clients
Mhm.
or population that they serve from a place of humanity and from a place of dignity. And
Yeah.
sometimes that
Yeah.
part is missing, which um, I would love to hear how impactful like your work and what you do is, and ensuring that nonprofits can tell their story and tell the story of their population in a way that is that's dignifying.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think the reason why I've started this agency to really focus on that, and I don't know if it will always be that way, like I'm also
Yeah.
figuring it out,
Right.
was because there's such a huge gap when it comes to how nonprofits show up on social media platforms versus everybody else, because they're usually stretched with money and
Yeah.
staff, and everybody's just trying to do the best that they can to serve the people that they're serving. But with the pandemic and everything being online, they're really like lagging so far behind when it comes to like
Mhm.
increasing their donor base, getting their message out there. Like a lot of the content is stale. A lot of nonprofits are posting like gala pictures and like fundraising events. And I'm like, don't do that, friends.
Don't do
Like
that.
we,
No,
you
you're
know,
the Irish staff. Don't post gala pictures. Go ahead, Khaleeqa. I'm
don't
sorry.
put like they're like don't like they're posting the gala pictures of like these beautiful events, but then they're asking people for money. Like make it make sense. So I think
Right.
for me, being CEO of a nonprofit, I was like, okay, well, here's how we can do it better. And so a lot of nonprofits, instead of coming from the point of view of the marginalized group that they're helping and just amplifying those stories, which is important, but a lot of people who are in those situations do not want to be on Instagram, do not like some people in the worst situations of their lives do not want to be blasted all over social media. And
Right.
so how can you as a nonprofit position yourself as a thought leader and create content that aligns with the solutions that you're actually putting out there? And so that was like a big thing for me. Like, how are you talking about, one of my clients works with ending homelessness. How are you talking about all the creative ways that you're doing it? How fun is it to volunteer at your organization? Like, what's the energy like on an outreach? What's the energy like on a when you guys are rallying your team to talk about this? What are the creative ways that you're thinking about this problem? Like, how are you showing up in these local and national spaces? And how can you talk about the problem with the framework of your solution? And so, like, we're creating really unique and different content pillars for nonprofits that I don't think, at least because I'm online all day, every day, I do not see these content pillars at all. Like, it's just super creative because nobody is doing it. And so I think that really like it excites me, but it's also scary because most nonprofits are also like considered a part of the institution. They're more of like institutional, like here's, so change moves a lot slower through those organizations. And
Yeah.
so for them to say like, even for me to even say to them, hey, don't post your gala pictures, they're like, what? That's like our time of year when we share everything. And I'm
Right.
like, no, well, like, let's think of it differently. Instead of posting these pictures, why don't you post the impact that you're going to share at the gala or whatever it is to the audience? Because the impact is what is going to galvanize and create a movement around what you're doing. And so it's just a different frame of mind, but because organizations who are doing this type of really important charity work are so stretched, I love that Real Well can come in and be like a breath of fresh air or take some of the load off of them and being able to share the messages that they want to share in a really meaningful and dignifying way. And so it's just really exciting. I love that. Like I'm working on a plan to create more solutions so
Love.
that like I'm one agency, but how do you set up an entire nonprofit department to be able to be activating on this way? And we
Mhm.
also talked about diversity in voices of how we're communicating in marginalized communities and like the DEI aspect of it all, like what language we're using. And I think a lot of, again, institutionalized nonprofits don't really have a way of adapting to that yet. And so I really want to create a solution for them on how they can talk about it in a really dignifying way, but also like galvanize a movement around what they're doing.
This is so I'm loving everything that I'm hearing, Khaleeqa. And
Thank you.
you're essentially you're reconstructing the system of media as it was known before. And you're helping nonprofits, social causes to be their most authentic self, while ensuring that the people that they serve have their dignity while doing it. But you're
Mhm.
doing it from from a lens of equity, justice,
Mhm.
diversity,
Yeah.
and I think that part of media is often missing, right? And when we think
Mhm.
about just pivoting a little bit, we're thinking about our young people, which of course they're the ones that are
Yeah.
consuming and all media a lot more than probably anyone else. Um,
Yeah.
what's the impact that this type of movement can have on our youth? The ones that are always leaning to media to express themselves, to learn, to engage, and to connect. This type of movement and solution that you're building, reshaping media, how can this? What kind of positive impact does it have on our young people, or can it have?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Immediately, I think if you can pivot more socially conscious humanitarian content and doing it in an entertaining, engaging, and educational way, you're going to shape the minds of young people so that they will care about the things that are happening to the people around us, to the environment, whatever that cause is. And so you're building up like an army of constituents who otherwise would, like there's so much content out there, like, and it's sometimes I'm like, yes, I'm deep and I'm in, like the environmentalist TikTok or this kind of mode of thinking. But even if someone's in that space and they're looking at like outfits of the day and then a video pops up about what's happening in New York City around homelessness, and it's as engaging and inspiring and educational as everything else, it's going to spark something in them. It's going to spark an idea. It's going to change their perspective of how they can engage with their community. And so I think it's so vital because it's so lopsided now, where it just feels like shallow and fluff and, and that stuff is, yes, there's a place for that. Like we can't do the heavy stuff all the time, but the heavy stuff is getting neglected because a lot of organizations are unseen or they don't know how to pivot in this way. And
Wow.
so it's about being creative because we do have to reach a younger generation. And the younger generation is not getting a hard copy mailer and looking at like, they're not getting a mailer. They're not like,
Right.
so investing in this now, you're building up that base before, I'm sure in the next few years, mail, all that stuff is just going to become really obsolete in a way. I don't think organizations are really aware of how quickly this is happening.
Oh, Kalia, this is just amazing. I'm listening to you and I'm envisioning and thinking about the future, and not being a social media creative like you are, but would love to pick your brain. What does the future look like in this space, in this industry? What does it look like for us?
Hmm. Yeah, I have a really amazing, talented, beautiful sister who I think is watching. And we talk all the time because she works in tech marketing. And we were just having this conversation about like just the oversaturation of everything, like how it's kind of like content is just becoming like overwhelming. And a lot of people are in spaces as experts when they're really not, and you really don't know where to get valuable information from. And
Mhm.
so what I'm doing and pivoting my clients in a way is to again become thought leaders and experts, especially because most of my clients have like a degree or very, very much have a background of authority around a particular expertise or field.
Mhm.
And we're creating like micro communities so that people
Wow.
can engage with them specifically if they're seeking out expert knowledge in whatever content they're looking to create. Because I think our society will have like a balloon and then we'll move into these smaller community models
Oh,
where if you're looking for information around, psychology for, one of my clients works as a psychologist, and you want to get somebody who's licensed, trusted, You
Yes.
don't want to coach on TikTok telling you maybe to like do something that could be harmful.
Yes.
Um, you're going to go directly to the source. And so me and my sister were talking about like, how can, what does it look like for someone to go directly to the source? Is that process as seamless as it is for them to engage in, you know, where they're engaging now? And how can we make that process exciting and communal? I'm really big on community. And so I'm pivoting everyone now. I'm like, the change is here, friends. We're beginning, you know, what is that? Like list building has always been a thing, but even more so now, like in taking that up a notch, like several notches, and
Yeah.
making that community experience for someone who's engaged with your newsletter, whatever, like really out of this world. So that when they are looking for that specific authority on a topic, they will come to you.
Wow. No, this is absolutely amazing. Micro communities, building an army of constituents. We'll be looking to smaller community models and the media space. They'll be going directly to the source, and the solutions will be very communal focused. I love that. And if you can just leave us with two words of advice, one for nonprofits, how do they begin to, I guess, to begin to even have these conversations on um, moving into this new wave? Any advice to
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit leaders? And then secondly, for those that are interested in coming into this or getting into this career or this industry, may not know how to start, if you can give them advice too. So first for the nonprofits, secondly to those interested in coming into this career.
Um, Thank you for this question. I think for nonprofits, like what immediately came to me was break everything you think you know about how to market in technology. Like just tear it up and break it, because a lot of our experience with social media is very personal. Like if you're on your phone at night in your bed looking at things, but that personal experience, while it is true to you, it might not be the reality of what is really happening. And because everybody engages with this, everyone thinks that they're an expert. And so you really have to take a data driven approach to how you're building out a nonprofit strategy or a social media strategy. You know, you got to understand who you're trying to talk to, where are they at, what are the trends. And I think if you're taking that approach, you're going to do a little bit better than maybe your competitor. But it requires a level of open mindedness that you can't be inhibited by like what you've done before or just things you have in place. You kind of just have to break it all to build something really good and relevant for right now. And then to people who are looking to get into this field, um, I guess my biggest advice would be to just start creating. There was, I mean, my journey is riddled with moments of imposter syndrome and just all of this stuff. And in that whole thing, I just never stopped creating,
Mhm.
whether it be for myself or for someone else. I was always creating. And so I would just advise like keep creating, keep doing, you're gonna get better. When I started, I was terrible. Like if you look at some of my designs and websites, they're just terrible. But over time they got better and it continues to get better. And it, you know, so just don't stop creating and you'll find your lane. You don't have to have your lane figured out right now. You know, the thing back when I started was all about niching down. Now no one wants you to niche down. Everyone's like, show it all and do it all. So I'm like, what's the advice, friends? Because either we're niching or we're not. We're doing, and I'm like, just be yourself and create, and they'll like the world will find a space and a lane for you because you're supposed to be doing that. So
I love that. That's so, that there is really powerful. Being yourself, being authentic, and the world will find that space for you, or you'll
yeah,
find your space in the world. I love it. This is so
thank you.
exciting. I feel like we have to have a lot more conversations about this because I do
Yeah,
believe that this really is the way that we need to start shaping our systems to especially find solutions to a lot of the problems that we're dealing with on a
yeah,
societal level. struggle, be it homelessness, like you mentioned, or
Mhm.
violence, or mental
Yeah,
issues. A lot of these things can be solved through innovative media solutions too, and that's the part we
yeah.
tend to neglect. So continue, Kalia, trailblazing in
Thank
this
you.
industry. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for just your approach. And I'm hoping that the micro communities that you talked about, that I see that all over the place. And I'm hoping
Thank
that
you.
our media person is on, and I'm sure she's really inspired hearing you too. But we would love to start rethinking things from the standpoint of what you talked about today.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I don't take it lightly when someone gives me a platform to share my thoughts and insights. So thank you.
Thank you. And Clea, how could people reach you if they're interested in being a client or reaching out to you and learning more about your company?
Sure. So my website is real, REEL, well, media.com. And so you can definitely send me a message there. I'm also on Instagram as just Khaleeqa Rouse. I want to start blogging and doing all the things again now that I've kind of like come out of my shell a bit. And so, yeah, there'll be some cool things like behind the scenes about being an entrepreneur and things like that. So, yeah, I'm excited.
I love it. And her website is right here. Please visit her website, especially those that are interested in learning more about branding or starting a brand. Reach out to her, www.realwellmedia.com. Thank you so much. And thank you, Kalia, again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for watching and for joining us today for this quick fireside chat. We hope that this inspired you. We have a woman of color out here in the field that's doing it in media. And we want this message to be able to inspire other women or boys or whoever you are that may be interested in getting into this work. There's more. There's a place for you here if this is your passion. So please reach out to Kalia if you have any questions or if there's anything that really resonated with you that you want to follow up with her on. Her website, again, if we can put that up one more time, is realwellmedia.com. Did I say that? Got it. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. We appreciate all of you for listening and for tuning in today. We'll be back next week. Today was our final episode of our Trailblazers and Trendsetters series. We'll be starting a whole new series in the month of April. Yes, we are almost in April, y'all. So really excited about that. Please, again, don't forget to follow us on social media at iRace Inc. On Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. And don't forget to follow me at Shaniqua E. Moore on all platforms. Don't forget, again, to subscribe to ATO Rice Podcast, whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or iHeartRadio. There is a platform for you to listen to our episodes. We're really excited to continue bringing these amazing conversations to you to ensure that you're feeling inspired and uplifted. That's what it's all about. We appreciate all of you. Wishing you all a wonderful afternoon whenever you're watching this or evening. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Stay tuned. Thank you all.